Brendon Kleen, good to be with you, my friend, here the day before the 4th of July. No cupcake subliminal messages, I think, for NBA free agency this year. If you remember that with Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, then you're a real one, and I love you for that. Those out there that know. If you know, let us know in the comments below on YouTube. But we did get a retirement on Tuesday before we get into all the free agency and trade stuff going on right now, and that is Kemba Walker, Charlotte Hornets All-Star, 4-time NBA All-Star, retired. He obviously was in Europe, I believe, the last 2 seasons. Also played with the Knicks, the Celtics. Had an unfortunate end, I think, to his pro career. Just injuries really derailed him. But to me, Brendan, one of the most fun players at his peak. I think an underrated guy for much of his peak in Charlotte, just based on where he was playing and what that team accomplished. But how will you remember Kemba Walker?
I hate to be, negative, I guess, or kind of skip past all the great stuff he did as a pro, but it's the UConn run.
Yeah, why is that negative?
It's just like he did 13 years of stuff between now and then, so it's kind of like, whatever. You're only what you were when you were 21,
No, but I listed out all the NBA stuff, and in my head, the moment I tell that, I was like, I forgot I didn't mention Cardiac Kemba, which is why he becomes like a household name in the first place. Like we definitely don't think of him the same if he's just like a milquetoast college point guard who has this same NBA career. But if Cardiac Kemba does not start the legend, I think it's a different career, and we're probably not even talking about him on this cold open question right now, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. 24 points per game in the regular season as a junior that year, and then 33 in the conference tournament, 33 in the round of 32 that year, 36 in the round of 16, and countless big late game shots along all of that. Beats Brad Stevens and the Butler Bulldogs in the national final. In addition to a bunch of blue bloods along the way, he beat Syracuse, Louisville, Arizona, and Kentucky that season, and then beats kind of the Cinderella Butler team. So just one of the probably, in hindsight, like last runs like that of a guy who was an upperclassman, kind of stuck with it, came out of nowhere, and actually became an NBA player. I mean, I'm not, you don't ever want to just fully say never. I'm not saying no one will ever do it, but you just add that he was so tiny and everything else. It just felt like, and UConn had kind of had a rough patch and all that, and he kind of brought him back. Like, that confluence of everything and turning that into a legit, fun, productive NBA career. Just an awesome story, and small guard injuries it always tends to happen. But look, he made a name for himself. Not a lot of players can say they did all that.
On that point about the small factor, and by the way, I know what I'm going to throw. My sports YouTube deep dive tonight is going to be Cardiac Kemba highlights. I think that just feels right. Kemba Walker, this is from Basketball Reference. Among players 6 foot or shorter, only Allen Iverson had more seasons of 20 points or more per game. Elite company for him to be only beat by Allen Iverson in that category. The two things, Brennan, and these are two very different things that came to me with Kemba. So number one, there's this highlight that I stumbled upon going through the NBA subreddit, which was him crossing over Nikola Mirotic. And Nikola Mirotic, remember Nikola Mirotic? Got just totally got his feet crossed over and fell back all the way basically towards the rim, and he pauses, hits the three, and Michael Jordan's just laughing on the sideline. Cold as shit highlight. That's amazing. If he gets a honorary ceremony for the Hornets, that should be the main highlight. Number two, do you remember when he signed with the Knicks and he'd already had these injury issues and we didn't know how durable he was going to be anymore? Tibbs is the coach at that point, and someone asked, are you going to play 44 minutes back-to-backs? They basically asked him a question, are you going to play Tibbs minutes? And he just kind of laughed, and Tibbs was when Tibbs was he's going to play these minutes. And I just in my head, I remember watching this and seeing the quotes and being like, this is not going to end well. And it didn't end well, but I was like, who, maybe that was the money, it's the Knicks, whatever. But Kemba Walker playing for Tibbs at that point in his career remains one of the most insane things that I think is probably happened in his career. That's just nuts. That's such a bad matchup.
Yeah. Yeah. He also this past year just played for a EuroLeague team and had kind of one last hurrah. Only played 11 minutes per game, but kept it going. And it does kind of just speak. It's similar to Isaiah Thomas. He just passed through Phoenix this past year. It sucks. These small guards get it taken away from them way too soon a lot of the time. I hate to make it about somebody else, but given that he did just change teams again, it does just kind of make you appreciate Chris Paul even more, doesn't it?
Shout out. I appreciate Chris Paul all the time. We are Chris Paul appreciators over here. I also love the framing, Brendan, of the Chris Paul thing. I agree not making it about him, but I love that there was like an idea in one of the stories I had that he's going to make $11 million this year. It's like he can still prove himself as one of the league's elite guards. And I'm like, Chris, you're 38.
There's not a lot of proving that needs to be done. Yeah, he got the money. He's there to do a specific job, which is help those guys get their act together. Yeah, if you're expecting Chris Paul to need to prove anything at age 38, I'd recommend just, like you said, maybe a YouTube deep dive of Chris Paul for the past 20 years. I think that's the proof.
Just go watch like New Orleans Chris Paul. That guy fucking
yeah,
ruled.
exactly.
But go watch some Kemba Walker highlights. Congratulations and best of luck to Kemba Walker. I will miss watching you play basketball at your peak because it was very, very fun and very for good art. On today's show, we've got a West arms race headlined by the Oklahoma City Thunder. Are the Thunder the favorites in the West now? We're going to talk Donovan Mitchell's 3-year extension with the Cavs, and we're going to play free agency matchmaker with 5 free agents still on the board. That is coming up today on the Just Basketball Show. Hey there, welcome into the Just Basketball Show. I'm Chris Manning. That is my guy, Brendon Kleen. We're here with you not 1, not 2, but 3 days a week here, covering all things hoops. You can follow, rate, review on your podcast app platform of choice. Hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel. Brendan's dog just made a cameo. We love that. Brendan, what's your dog's name?
His name is Dingo, and I don't know why he just did that. He was defending himself from my chair wheel, but it was not in the realm of his body at all. So, just being an animal.
He is like an NBA player, Brendan, in the sense that he is just trying to make sure he gets his free throw touches and the refs are aware at all times that he is in constant danger. He
flopped is basically the point. Yeah,
your dog flopped. That's good stuff. Shout out to Dingo, real one. Check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and X. I want to tell you, too, that support for today's episode of the Just Basketball Show comes from BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use code JustBasketball, and you get up to $1,500 in a first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here is how it works. Step 1, you download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using code JustBasketball. Step 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you'll receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply. Brendan, let's start with our big question here. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they get Alex Caruso for the low, low price of Josh Giddey. They got Isaiah Hartenstein. They went out and got the premier center in this year's free agency class, a guy who fits them, I think, perfectly in a lot of ways, which we'll get into. They had this window to spend, and they have taken it. So this begs the question. They were the 1 seed last year, obviously losing the second round. Don't make the finals. But they're adding to what worked last year with these moves after being the 1 seed and at least putting up a good fight against Dallas, even if it didn't go their way. To you, are they now the favorites in the Western Conference?
I think so. I have the same questions about them that I had last year to a degree, and we can get into that. But I think that they became a ton more versatile and just more trustworthy, given that, if nothing else, Caruso and Hartenstein are guys that are going to be just more reliable, more of a sure thing at their role. I also think because, relatively speaking, they had cap space and they only had to give up Giddey, like you said, for Caruso, my hope is, as opposed to maybe, the Pelicans with DeJounte Murray, for instance, like, they don't have to play Hartenstein 35 minutes to satisfy whatever commitment that they made to him, or make sure Caruso is in the closing lineup every night. They can just sort of add to the mix of what already made them special, but obviously as well, be something different that they didn't have before. So I think both guys could help with the rebounding and kind of physicality that they were lacking at times. We obviously know Hartenstein's going to be somebody who can defend the biggest bigs, give their offense a little bit of a new dimension. But that's kind of back to the concerns maybe that I still have. Their offense bogging down.
Yeah.
More than rebounding, more than guarding Kyrie Irving or whatever, and Luka, that is to me why they didn't get over the hump this year. Now, maybe Shea has another level to get to, but J-Dub definitely does. Yeah, those are still going to be their two lead offensive guys. That still needs to get there, but also, like you said, they were the 1 seed. So how much, and they made it to Game 7 of the second round. So how much better are you really asking them to have to get in order to be that favorite than they already were? Probably not much, and maybe it is those marginal moves that get them there. So I think that they, on paper, are the team that everyone else has to kind of stack themselves up against right now in terms of talent and depth and everything else.
I think that's right, and I think I'm really glad you brought up J-Dub in particular, but also Shea, because the moves that they made are good in a vacuum. Those are winning basketball players, contending teams. I guarantee you, every contending team in the league would want Alex Caruso on their basketball team. I think most teams, even if they don't need a traditional center, look at Isaiah Hartenstein and his passing, his cutting, his rim protection, all of that stuff, and think that's a center I'd really like to have. The Knicks are absolutely going to miss him. Like the Knicks are going to look different next year without him. He was awesome for them this past year in particular with the Mitchell Robinson stuff. But this all, to me, Brandon, comes together because you have the J-Dub evolution that can still come, whether that's shot making, whether that's his handle, whether that's like a more diversified offensive game, whatever that is going to look like. That's a part of this. Those and Shea being in his prime or like inching towards his absolute prime, I think there's still room for him to get better. I'm curious to see how like Team Canada for him this summer builds for him, because I do believe in the idea that your international experience can be a step, like another boost.
Wait
for
a
you.
second. When we were covering the World Cup, you laughed at me for overvaluing this stuff.
Brendan, I'm all the way in. I've been doing Olympic roster. We're going to talk about the Olympics a lot in the show. I've been looking at Olympic rosters. I read a Luka Doncic.
So I got you, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you hooked me in. I read a Luka Doncic quote today where he was like, I'm in a country of 2 million people. I'm so thrilled. This means something. I'm in. That and like watching the Euros.
Maybe it's... I was just going to say, maybe it's the international soccer tournaments getting you back in the feelings.
That and getting really mad at Greg Berhalter. Just really good stuff.
Yeah.
We're doing great. But
I'll just say, look, Brandon Ingram, we saw this coming in terms of the fit with Zion and the questions. If you watched him, and if you watched Ant, I'm just saying, the World Cup, when it's not the best of the best Team USA, we still got a peek at a lot of the narrative. So I'm on board with you. Okay, and I do think that helped Shea last fall. I think it did for sure. He led that team way further than we thought, and he was doing the same. I mean, I know he was an MVP vote getter the previous year too, but he's just kept getting better. So I don't think that's going to slow down. It's just a matter of how. I think kind of similar to J-Dub. It's like they just play such a style that maybe changing that style a little bit is going to be part of how they get better.
Yeah, I mean, I think J-Dub would be the one. I think Shea. I'm just trying to find MVP ads for next year because I'm thinking about a Shea MVP bet as we're talking about this. Like they had initial MVP ads that might not be up anymore from BetMGM, but J-Dub feels like the one where you could see like an evolution. I think in a different way. Shea just might like refine everything and be that much harder to guard and a little stronger, a little older, a little more mature. All of that stuff. Maybe just like maybe both of them just benefit from Caruso, even if he's a little bit unwilling to shoot at times. Like isn't going to be the negative impact on spacing in the way Giddey was, right? And like Hartenstein will give them more than other Jalen Williams would give them in terms of playmaking and screen setting and infrastructure from the center position. But J-Dub, if there's like a mid-range game, if there's like more efficient post-ups, like if there's just another element to his game that he can like add to it and it diversifies, and that gives you like another layer of offense to beat defense in the playoffs, beat teams now that have a full season of film and tape and scouting reports on you to kind of build different ways to attack your offense next year from a defensive perspective. Like that is just going to make them harder to guard. And then you throw in Chet Holmgren, who is also really good and like is going to be better next year. There's no way that guy isn't a more complete, more refined player next year. So I think, Brendan, you put this like growth, this youth that they still have on their side right now, like that youth clock is still very much in their favor paired with these moves. And I'm in agreement with you. This is on paper right now my number one favorite in the West next year. I love the upside. They have more upside, I think, of any team in the conference right now. I love the moves they've made. They've had the best offseason, I think, of any team in the league so far, in my opinion, except for maybe Philly. I love everything about this team, and there's no reason not to be all in on the Thunder for next year.
Yeah, they were the third offense and the fourth defense in the regular season. Again, 57 wins, sorry. In the playoffs, their offense, just to back up statistically what we're saying, is what fell. They were the 10th best offense in the NBA in the playoffs. So that's where I think you have to expect growth. Jalen Williams, to me, one easy thing. Well, it's not easy, but one obvious thing, I should say, is he took 95 pull-up threes in 71 games. He took 272 pull-up twos. So maybe stretch that out a little bit. Maybe find ways to be a little bit different than Shea. Maybe that's kind of what it is the differentiation between when each of those guys has the ball and maybe what the approach might be. Because I think Shea's perfectly content to be off ball at times. But if it's like you're trading out very similar types of possessions with Shea running things versus J-Dub, and it's just a little worse, then that kind of speaks to when Shea's off the court or, whatever, you're going to get less out of your offense. But he had a 22 usage last year.
Yeah.
And more than a third of his shots were threes. He was really a pick and pop off ball guy. I don't think they're going to be putting the ball in his hands to run things right away in year two, but can he operate, attack switches more consistently in the post or, in an ISO type of environment? Can he, get out in transition, maybe grab and go at times? Can you just start to piece together things that make him really special that bring a new wrinkle? Because again, I'm not convinced, and part of what happened with their offense wasn't just Jalen Williams. It's a little ridiculous to put it all on him, but Dallas also just clogged things. Dallas didn't buy that their shooters were real, and that isn't going to change just because Lou Dort had a great season. You bring in Alex Caruso, he's questionable, like you said. So I guess just to wrap on the Thunder side of it before we see if these other teams can compete, that is part of what I like about the Hartenstein thing, is that he's not just Andre Drummond, right?
Yes.
Like, we kind of would have been okay with that player. But instead, they get a guy who can be a dribble handoff hub, set better screens than some of their other bigs, create advantages in space and manipulate a defense in new ways that obviously they believe will be helpful. Otherwise, you don't bring him in. You don't bring Isaiah Hartenstein in to go stand in the corner and launch threes or, just set a screen and go get out of the way, right? Like, if you're bringing him in, it's because you think his skill set can help you. And so they won't be such a 5-out team, and they won't be so dependent on the first guy who touches the ball in a possession or the second guy and kind of maybe, they're not a one-pass offense team. They can get it moving around the arc, but a lot of time it's drive and kick. He's different.
Yeah, Hartenstein's a good, especially for a big, he's a very good passer. Like, he is a very smart, calculated, timely passer. It's very easy to imagine J-Dub, Caruso, maybe a little less Caruso, but J-Dub, Dort, Wiggins, Isaiah Joe a little more as a shooter. But, you can imagine all the things they can do with the cutters off ball. And by the way, in addition to the free agency moves they made, paying up for your role guys who are good, and some of that is create tradable contracts, all of that stuff. I wouldn't say this is just we love these guys guaranteed. But the fact that they also are paying these role guys who they could have just tried to keep for another year at really cheap costs. They're saying we're going to lock you in now and pay you your market value because we need to keep you in value. That's also really good business from Sam Presti to go ahead and do that. That's just really, really smart and thinking ahead. Look at the structure of the contract. Hartenstein's like 2 years, 60 basically, and then there's like a third year non-guarantee. They can renegotiate, figure it out from there. Like they've built in flexibility with these things as well. I love everything about this. I can't wait to watch as much Thunder as possible. I'm doing like a very early list, Brendan, of teams I need to make sure I just am watching as much as possible now, like post doing Locked On Cavs and that stuff. Like I can just bounce around a little bit more freely. Very excited to just crush tons of Thunder next year. Shea, by the way, plus 600 for MVP. So you bet $10, you win 70. I like that.
Do they have championship odds? Where are the Thunder versus these other West teams?
Let me pull this up. Jason Tatum, by the way, still plus 1,800 to win MVP.
Is that higher or lower? I don't know what you mean.
I'm just saying it's just like he's perpetually going to be just like very far off the bat.
The Thunder are plus 800 to win the championship. They are second to Denver in the West, so maybe we should go there next.
Yeah, I see another book. I'm not going to name them, but they're at plus 800. Boston's at plus 300, Thunder at plus 800, Philly at plus 800, the Knicks at 825, and the Nuggets at plus 875. So you could get them, but so in some, depending on where you look, perhaps the number one odds in the West. Let's go to Denver. Lose KCP. Haven't done anything, is it? Wendy did say, I believe on television, that they have offered Jamal Murray the 4-year, $270 million extension. He has not accepted it as of yet. But you think that would get done at some point. That's just a lot of money, and you think they just keep running this back as long as they can. Brennan, the playoffs made me a little worried. You know, they got caught in the Anthony Edwards vortex a little bit, and the Nuggets obviously had a tough style matchup against the Wolves. And the Wolves obviously then had like a tough style matchup in some ways against Dallas and all of this stuff. So like some of this can be matchup dependent in the West, particularly where it's just it's a bare knuckle boxing fight. It feels like for some of these things. But I am now increasingly just like worried about what this Nuggets team, like how high their ceiling is going to be. Like Jokic is the best player in the world still to me. I think he had the best single game of anyone in the playoffs still this past year in that win against Minnesota in that series. With him, you can accomplish just about anything. But like, is Christian Brown ready to start? I'm mixed on that. I've seen very varying opinions on this from different people who follow that team closely. Are any of the other? Is it Strawweather? Is it tight? Like, are any of the young guys they've bet on ready to step up? We don't know. Is there another move that is really gonna like elevate this team? Like they might be like betting on just the formula working so well that they can do this, and that might work out. But with how aggressive the Thunder are, with how competitive I think we know this conference is, I am a little worried about how good this Nuggets team. I think there's a really obvious case, Brendan, that if you look at the last three Nuggets teams, the title team, the team that we had favored to win the title this past year for much of this year until they lost, and then this upcoming year, this is going to be the worst Nuggets team we've seen in this current like 3-year little window of everyone's healthy and rolling.
I mean, it will be, right? I mean, unless shocking things happen, I think it would have to be. So,
like I like the Russ edition for them. I don't think that is like elevating them in a major way. It's a nice piece. I like it, but it doesn't change the whole calculus of how I'm going to think about them.
Well, so here's a way that I might slightly alter how you put it. You said that you're worried about their ceiling. I would say I'm a little more worried about their floor, if they have a high enough floor. Because I know we made a lot out of the idea of the starting five being the best in basketball for basically 2 years running. I thought that KCP was, to me, even better defensively this past year than he was the previous year, his first one in Denver. And he also has a really good chemistry, a really great chemistry as a screener, as kind of his own little two-man game partner with Nikola Jokic. A lot of that stuff is going to be hard to replace aside from just he can make threes and he'll take threes, which is the most obvious difference between him and Brown, who sometimes can make them but doesn't like to take them, and that'll be an adjustment for Brown, although I generally am optimistic about him. But forever, right, the question with Denver has been winning those non-Jokic minutes. or breaking even, or how much do you have to ask him to play, and on down the line. The year they won the title, Bruce Brown plus Aaron Gordon going crazy as a kind of a backup center, and Jamal Murray being really, really, really good was enough where they could scrape by when Jokic was off the court. Reggie Jackson comes in and plays a bigger role. Murray's not quite as good this postseason. They lose Jeff Green, and that gets worse. So you are still talking about the margins at the end of the day if you believe Brown can step up. And so I think to me, it's more of a, obviously whether they reach their ceiling is going to be a question, but I think their ceiling is almost as high. The problem to me is, can they win enough regular season games? Can they stay afloat in those minutes without Jokic? Can they cobble together a perimeter defense that is, good for 48 minutes and good for 82 games? That like kind of the basic stuff is where I really start to worry. And yeah, they are asking a lot of I guess some of these young guys. Maybe there's just a version, I don't know, is there a version of this team where they get a little bit, maybe more defensively oriented at times, and a guy like Peyton Watson plays a bigger role and things like that?
But even like thinking about that is wild, considering, I know he had a really rough playoffs, and I, whether that means a decline for him, I think is an open question, but like KCP was like, I think a borderline like all defense candidate like last year. And it's like, you now have to double down on defense without like your best perimeter defensive option. Like that is like, I understand what you're saying, but
I
that's
guess
like,
Brown is pretty good there too, So
yeah, but it's asking him
not a vet though.
But the question is Christian Brown ready to like elevate himself in this significant way and evolve in year 3? That like last year, I think he probably is pretty similar to what he was as a rookie. If maybe like the rookie thing felt maybe even a little more seismic just because they won a title and all of this, and it's a rookie, and it's like, oh, this rookie's good. Like we can count on this guy, and like that, it's year 3 time. It's like, okay, is there a leap to come for him now? And if that happens, and they believe in that, maybe that answers some of these questions. Maybe that solves for some of this. I have, Brendan, wondered, I don't know who the targets would be or what, but like I have in my head just wondered, is this the time to like split Michael Porter Jr. salary? Weston and I talked about this a little bit, but I keep coming back to, is this the time to split Michael Porter Jr. salary into like 2 players and try to do that? I don't know. You lose something with that, with like getting rid of that guy, hit what he is and his freeness as a shooter, but I would think about it. I would have a meeting.
Of course. I mean, we've been talking, Wes and I did, I think, 2 separate episodes on MPJ trades. I think that's still, of course, has to be something.
You and I might have even talked about this like early days of the show. I feel like this is very possible we just keep like coming back to this.
Well, because it's their only player who's not fundamental to what they are as a team, in terms of Gordon being their best defensive forward and off-ball offensive player. He's a backup playmaker in a lot of ways for them. Obviously, the Murray-Jokic thing is their team, so it kind of you get to him very quickly. They also are so top-heavy salary-wise now that there's not a lot of other pieces that you can even trade who aren't just these young guys who also happen to be making minimums, So, Porter, sure, but I think he also has one of the worst contracts in the NBA. So, given what he is as a player, I'm not saying he's a bad player, but he's making 36, 38, and then $41 million. So I guess to end on Denver and maybe jump to one of these other teams, Chris, I think I have like a very rough rundown of the West. I have Denver kind of, I almost think everybody here is maybe 1 through like 5 is kind of probably still in the top tier to me, and maybe just Oklahoma City's at the top of that tier.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I look at it, but Denver might be at the back of it.
I think it's very possible, and I still would want none of that in the playoffs, I would be like, well, I don't want Jokic. like that's
kind of what I meant with the ceiling, It's like I still think that they can win the title because I think that they can just get 30 minutes a game of the starting 5, even without KCP, and be pretty scary when those players are on the court, but it's the rest of the time that worries me.
We have 2. I think there's 2 more teams we should hit. Apologies to not getting to the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Wolves. But I think we got to talk about the Mavs getting Klay Thompson officially, and we should talk about the Warriors who lose Klay Thompson but have added Kyle Anderson, and maybe, just maybe, are going to make a hard pursuit of Lauri Markkanen. Let's start with the Mavs because that's the one in reality. And I'm gonna let me workshop a take with you here, Brendan. Just me and you. Okay. Are we sure Luka, Kyrie, and Klay is like a good trio? Like, are we sure like that is a functional two-way grouping of three players?
No, we're not. And this is so the two most interesting things about the Klay signing to me, and we were kind of debating this one quite a bit in our little trio of host group chat, maybe more so than any other move. And on the positive, I think he's still one of the best shooters, spot-up shooters in the entire NBA. He's one of the best movement shooters in the NBA. He's big, so he's one of the best forward shooters in the NBA. Whatever way you want to slice it, he will provide you that. So that's a positive, of course. I guess the opposite end of that is a shooter tends to have the most value to me in the half court because he's going to space the floor. He's going to, if you want to run sets where he is screening and using his gravity, running off of a screen and using his gravity, moving in any kind of way to bend a defense, that's going to happen when the game slows down and it's in the half court. Not that he can't make transition threes, but a lot of guys can make open transition threes. Does that mean they're going to slow down? And if so, if they bend their identity a little bit toward the fact that they now have Klay Thompson, I'm not positive that's a good thing.
Yeah, I almost worry that that's like tapping into too many of Luka's worst habits as a lead guy. Like some of the things that I think in the last year, Jason Kidd and Kyrie have really, I think, helped like whittle out of him a little bit. Like I think those two got like particularly bringing Kyrie in and a guy Luka clearly respects and wants to play with. Like the Luka drags the ball across half court stuff kind of got pushed out of his system, not all the way, but like more than we've had. And like with what Klay is at this point, slowing it down for him, like I could absolutely see that. And like not like the Warriors ever played, like their passing in the half court was very tight, but it's never like the Warriors were playing the fastest like basketball in the world. Like it was intention when it moved quickly. It was like side to side movement, not north to south, like beat you down the floor movement.
Yeah, outside of those moments early in the dynasty when Draymond would just be a freight train, but those were selective even then, But then kind of like the inverse of that, I guess, on the Klay side of things is I have to almost remind myself, well, he's only on a mid-level deal. So theoretically, kind of what we were saying with Hartenstein and Caruso, where it's like if the asset cost isn't a ton, then maybe you don't feel such an obligation to become what this player makes you. You don't have to close games with Hartenstein when it comes to OKC. So I guess there's a case to be made that he's just kind of a role player on this team, and maybe I'm overthinking it. However, to kind of spin it back again, and this is why this move's so fascinating, well, he just left the Warriors because he felt disrespected when it came to what his role was going to be. So is he going to be content playing 22 minutes a night and not closing games in Dallas? I don't know that answer. So a lot of it's just going to be we'll have to see in October. But a version of this deal where they are slower and they're playing him a lot and really, changing what their identity is as a team. I have to say I don't like that version of Dallas as much, and it would worry me that could be where this is headed.
I think there's a world where Klay doesn't close for them. I really do. I just could see a world where like you say like okay, like Kyrie, we need the ball handling, and he's a little better right now. Luka's Luka. We need
those two guys are, of
those
course.
Those are locks. Yeah. But it's like, okay, we got to, like, Maxi Kleber rising from the dead is going to be on here. Like, it's going to be Derek Lively. It's going to be
Yeah, I mean, I think
Marshall.
right now, if it's not Klay, their closing lineup would be Kyrie, Luka, Najee Marshall, P.J. Washington, and Derek Lively.
Yeah, I forgot about P.J. Washington. Yeah.
Right, so that would be the five to kind of keep them as close to what their identity was. Side note, I still worry a bit about the idea that Derek Jones is gone in terms of their up-tempo identity. I think the lobs and the touchdown passes for him helped. But that would be the five if Klay's not going to close. So it's really is Klay or Najee Marshall closing. I think that's really the question.
which tells you a lot about where Clay is at, because that wouldn't have been a conversation before the injuries and everything. Like, that just tells you where Clay is at. I want to see it. I can't wait to see how this looks. I can't wait to just see how weird it's going to be for him wearing a Mavericks jersey. Like, I think it's going to take some time. Wondering what happens. Wondering where the closest place he can put his boat is. I don't think Dallas is on the water.
I hope you're being like a little facetious. Do you actually not know the geography of the city of Dallas? Oh, okay.
No, it's not on the water.
Okay, good. Yeah. Maybe what's the closest? What city
Like,
is on the water?
Is he going to have like does he get like a residence in Galveston? Like what, like that he can like fly down to on a PJ like once on the weekends or something? Like I'm genuinely wondering what's going to happen with Clay's boat. Also, is Dallas as bike friendly as
There's got to be a lake, right? Yeah, there's a lake right outside of town.
All right, great.
I don't know the name of it, but I know that there's a lake.
But now I'm wondering, like, is his boat zoned for lakes? Like, is it a lake-sized boat? Like, I have lots of questions.
Lake Ray Hubbard, and there are multiple yacht clubs that I'm seeing. So
Okay.
I think he'll be okay.
Okay. Okay.
Those have popped up very readily. And then, yeah, maybe Galveston is just going to have to, Corpus Christi, get a little, summer residence or something.
Who did Barclays want to send to Galveston? Pelicans?
I believe so.
Okay.
I think that sounds right. Yeah.
Brandon,
So if all these teams are in kind of one cluster,
yes.
is Dallas closer to OKC at the top or Denver near the back of it?
Denver.
Okay.
I think it's Denver. I think just they got a lot out of they had a lot break right with the role guys last year. I mean, even Derek Jones, I agree with you on the tempo thing, but they might have got 125% like out of him. And like even if they brought him back at $10 million, that would have been tricky. Najee Marshall, you're betting on 1 year of improved 3-point shooting for this to really click. Like we don't really know exactly if that's gonna the whole year over year. Like I think they're closer to their moves are less rock solid than I think what Oklahoma City's are, and I think like Kyrie's 32. Like I don't. There's not the what is he going forward? I think it's really like, does Luka make them even better? Is like the Luka MVP like kind of thing coming? Like that would be my question.
But to your point on 125% with Derek Jones, I also think you could make a case that are you going to get a full postseason of relatively consistent, impactful defense from both Kyrie and Luka? I mean, before the finals, we thought those guys were putting forth a level of defensive intensity that was rare for them and very much a reason why they got as far as they did. Are you getting a mentality and a locked-in-ness of those two again like that? I mean, I don't know. I think what Derek Jones and P.J. Washington were able to kind of provide as culture setters in that way did bleed through back kind of upward toward the stars. And if that's not there, and, P.J. Washington, it's like we've really seen half a season of it, so I don't know. In a lot of ways, I think easier said than done. Boston was the better team. We all know that. But when you get there unexpectedly, you kind of got to win it in the case of the Mavs. And there's no guarantee they'll get close again. The West is just a nightmare, and they don't have the best roster. So,
yes. All right, let's hit on the Warriors because they've added Kyle Anderson, sign and trade with the Wolves. Quick, this is not worth a ton of analysis. I do like Anderson for them. I do like just the way he'll fit. I think the way he wants to pass. I think even if he's a little I think he'll fit the slowness of their half court stuff well. He'll fit the smartness of their system.
He's the right amount of slow. Yeah.
Yeah. The slow mo fits in the Bay. I think. Even if if Draymond's really good next year and like their other guys take a step forward defensively, whether that's Kuminga or and whatnot, like I think his defensive concerns are maybe less of an issue with some of that stuff, and depending on the lineups. I'm really interested to see if they go full out on this Larry Marketing thing because it's a big talent play. I do think to some degree they owe it to Steph to go make the best team possible for him. I really do think that. Marketing would be the big chip, I think, left to trade for this summer. Him and Draymond would be a really interesting front court in that I think they would really cover for each other in certain ways. Yeah. Lowry adjusting to I think Lowry would have an adjustment to the way they play. But in the same way like Paul George would have had to, I think this is the biggest talent play they can make right now. So it absolutely makes sense when they want to explore this and might try to do this.
Yeah, Markkanen fits. You could easily his versatility. You could easily see fitting into the way that they want to play. Right? I mean, he can be a screener. He can be a downhill guy. He can handle the ball. He can shoot the ball spot up. He can shoot the ball off movement. He can shoot it from the corner. He can shoot it from the top of the key. Defensively, he has versatility where, he's not a rim protector like he's going to be prime Serge Ibaka or anything, but he's a big physical body who you could see being a better partner just from that standpoint than a lot of guys Draymond has had since KD was there, just taking up space and being able to execute being so small. Otto Porter, once upon a time, was an underrated part of how they were able to pull some of that off, and Wiggins being at his best, so Markkanen would go a long way. They also just frankly need shooting. I mean, I know that might sound obvious. They just lost Clay. They did bring back DeAnthony Melton. They also lost Chris Paul. They just don't have a lot of high-volume shooters anymore outside of Steph. If Wiggins if that 1 year for him was more of a blip than anything, you start to worry of Melton's not a high-volume three-point shooter. Anderson doesn't shoot them at all. Kuminga, Moody, not really shooters. Podziemski is, so that helps. But he was here last year, so that's not really like a boost. So Markkanen would help them as well. To me, the question just becomes, and I guess it's kind of two-pronged. One, do you think adding Markkanen and maybe kind of not much else, where does that put them in all of this? Comparing if OKC is kind of what they're chasing and Dallas just made the finals and, Denver is the reigning champ with an MVP on their roster, does that put them close there? And then kind of, I guess, as you weigh that answer, if you're Mike Dunleavy Jr. and everyone there, do you give up Kuminga for the deal? And I think you have to answer yes to the first thing if you're going to answer yes to the second thing.
I'd be very scared about giving up Kuminga if that's where this ends up. I'd be a little scared, just because I think you need to bring all of this in together. You need to kind of bring all of these different elements of your roster in together. And Kuminga has made real strides in a way that I am just a real fan of his, and I think that's a playoff guy for you. And I also could understand if that's the risk you got to take to go get clearly a better player, more dynamic offensive option, a guy that him running stuff with Curry, Markkanen running stuff with Curry would be incredibly difficult to guard.
Yeah.
If this Markkanen stuff really heats up, Brendan, I don't know if it will. It's very hard to tell with Danny Ainge and the Jazz. I'd be really surprised if the Warriors... It's the Warriors and the Kings, to me, feel like the two teams most desperate to really do this. If we really get down to it and you think about it. Those are the two teams if feel like they have to do something.
Who has the better offer between the two?
So the offer from the Kings would
if we assume it kind of gets to the end of the negotiations and both teams, like you said, are desperate enough to really put everything on the table. We're assuming the crown jewel of Golden State's offer would be Kuminga.
Keegan's in the deal.
And then probably Murray on the other end, right? They both kind of have just their own picks, nothing special. They don't really have that second offensive guy.
I would rather have Keegan.
Young guy.
I'd rather have Keegan. I think just the shooting to me would make me prefer that. I just think he's a little more of a modern plug-in, fit-in with whatever you're going to do kind of player. So I think I'm going Keegan over Kuminga. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, if the Kings put Murray on the table, I think that I would agree. I'm not saying that will happen, right? We were just kind of doing a thought experiment there. But, yeah, I think you're probably right. And Golden State, do they have a backup? I don't really like any of the other players on the theoretically kind of on the trade market for them. So that gets nerve-wracking. And to answer my own question, I don't necessarily feel like even getting Markkanen, I'm putting them on the level of,
No.
Oklahoma City or Dallas. They still don't really have any big man depth, even though Markkanen helps,
They still would need another center, because Looney's gone and old and.
Well, he's they did guarantee him he's there, but what is he doing for you? Trace Jackson Davis is kind of a question mark. They don't really have a backup kind of shot creator on this roster with Chris Paul gone, unless Podziemski just takes a really big leap there. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough. They're in a weird spot. to say the least. Andrew Wiggins just sucking the minute they gave him a contract. I know we've all talked about it plenty, but like that was the big issue. He's taken up a lot of space on their books, and it just was, frankly, a negative player a lot of last season.
Yeah, Team Canada Wiggins beef has been a fun little subplot this summer too. To answer your question officially, I would say I would have them below Denver. Like they're not even getting into that tier to me. I don't think they're there, even with Markkanen. Yep. They would need to be a lot of like they would need like It's like you get Markkanen and Wiggins like finds himself.
Yep.
Which like good luck.
Or can you swing some sort of move involving Wiggins if he's not the salary in this? It starts to get kind of messy. But the point is, they're far from it. They're far from making it happen.
Yeah, it's tough. All right, let's get to Donovan Mitchell, who has signed a 3-year extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers. For the reasons people wondering why is that 3 instead of the max 4 he could have gotten. This is because after his 10 years of service in the league, he'll be eligible for a bigger extension at that point. So this is just him setting him up for another big payday when this is all said and done.
Yep.
Brendan, I think the Cavs are now in a spot where they absolutely have to go for it. They have to. You get Mitchell to re-sign. It was a thing that no one really, including myself, I would say was pretty pessimistic this was going to happen. All the reporting heard for months was that he has his eyes on the Knicks. The other teams are lining up trade offers for Donovan Mitchell, and guess what? He re-signed. He used the quick movie. If we had a buzzer for Chris uses a movie thing because you're here and Wes isn't. We like that. But did you see he posted the Jordan Belfort from Wolf of Wall Street? I'm not fucking leaving thing. I'm along with if I this is not this isn't a good list. But like the Jordan Belfort, like people not understanding like the context of that scene and sort of like why that is actually an insane thing happening in real time is like on par with me with like NBA players loving the Joker. Like, do you got what is going on here?
It's the same as the Matthew McConaughey scene at the beginning, where it's like he's teaching him how to embrace a culture that's gonna like eat his soul alive and ruin his life. That's kind of like Matthew McConaughey's like, try all this stuff that's gonna make you miserable. Yeah, nobody understands. I don't think most people want to like confront that movie in the way that it was intended to be confronted, but conversation for a different time.
Yeah,
but yes,
I do also want now 10 players to have to go watch Kinds of Kindness just to like see how they react to Yorgos. That is just now something I would like to happen. I'm just saying, I don't think it'll go well.
Okay, so also on the Donovan Mitchell thing, 2 + 1, not straight 3 years, right? So
yes.
So they're kind of still on the clock a little bit, and the question we wanted to ask is how do the Cavs build around Mitchell now that they have him?
Yes.
Big sigh of relief to get him, great, but what is exactly the next step? And here's where I wanted to kind of start the question. Do you buy the disappearance of the Garland trade noise, just as quick as it kind of popped up? Do you think that that's real, or do you think that that is Cleveland kind of playing the market a little bit and getting into, I guess, a staring contest with Clutch? That's what it feels like to me. But suddenly you have people like Brian Windhorst saying, the market's not there, it doesn't make sense, I'm not even sure if Garland wants to be traded himself or if that was just an agency thing, blah, blah, blah. Where do you think the real truth is in all that?
It's probably somewhere in the middle. It's probably Garland would like a bigger role and more responsibility, but also probably isn't in a rush to be traded. Like, I do think him and Donovan, like, as much as there is some natural friction, I think, and probably some frustration, I don't think like there is like an apathy towards each other in a way that would like necessitate it,
Yeah.
I also think Windy is right, and he's Brian Windhorst, like he is at the sourcing, but it's like you just look at the landscape for a point guard trade right now. It's not like there's not like an obvious. You have to get weird to really find one. I think is part of this, right? It's like, okay, let's say the Wolves were gonna try to go get a point guard, for instance. That would require using Towns. The Cavs aren't going to have Towns and Allen and Mobley, so it's like you're finding a home for Jared Allen. Like it becomes all these moving pieces to me. I also think the Cavs just hired a really perfect coach for Darius Garland. Like, that coach was a good coach for Donovan Mitchell. I think Kenny Atkinson's a pretty fucking good coach to get more out of Darius Garland. So I understand if the Cavs don't want to sell really low right now if they feel that's where the market's at. I think there's like a lot of this all competing against each other.
Yeah, look, it's not easy. It's kind of similar to what the Pelicans have run into a little bit, and that's part of why those two teams have been connected is, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the summer when we were doing an episode looking at, kind of previewing some of this, is like these teams, Atlanta being one of them as well, even kind of the Warriors like we were just talking about, where what they would want to trade to improve is also still a good player, and they want to get a good player back. It just gets really complicated when you're talking about fit and money and all that, even roster spots sometimes and all that kind of stuff. It's not an easy thing to pull off when you're not just wanting to. If they wanted to just dump Darius Garland somewhere,
they could do it.
The Spurs could have given them some picks instead of paying Chris Paul. But they didn't want Keldon Johnson back, just hypothetically as one kind of possible example with that or whatever. So it's not easy, but I just think the time has passed to believe that Cleveland is going to become a real bona fide championship contender by crossing their fingers that their young guys get good enough all of a sudden to make that happen.
Well, I think I agree with that. Here's the flip side of it, I would say. I can see a world where Jared Allen's trade value is maybe never been higher. $20 million contract in a world where Isaiah Hartenstein just got like $10 million more a year annual value for the next 2 years. Jared Allen's really good. Maybe not the same passer Hartenstein is, but a really good rim protector, really efficient as a dunker.
Better finisher, I would say.
Better finisher, yes. Like he is one of the, if there's a list of centers you're comfortable paying $20 million or more at in the league right now, he's firmly on that list. Like I would rather
great contract.
Right. Great contract. He's extension eligible now, but like that is a worry for a year from now. I think he's going to age pretty well and whatever he gets next, and his raise probably won't be huge. Like I don't think he's going to balloon to $40 million a year or anything like that. Maybe with the cap spike or something, but I could see a world where his trade value is your way to pivot out of this. It's like him and LeVert's money is like your way because you don't have a lot of picks, and I think his value you could make the argument has never been higher. And I also think Brendan, if it's, and maybe I just have thought about this way too much being here and covering that team a lot. The breakup I am more interested in seeing for the growth of the team is not Mitchell and Garland. It is Mobley and Allen. Yeah. Evan Mobley needs to be at 5. It is time to force Evan Mobley's evolution. And the only way that's going to happen is you take the training wheels off, and the training wheels are Jared Allen. Go get another center who is not Tristan Thompson. Find a veteran you like. You've used draft
Good
picks
luck,
on
though, this year. They're almost all gone.
It's a little late. Maybe there's one in a trade. You think about this in the future. Maybe you just bring back Tristan Thompson. He was fine last year, whatever, even post the PED suspension. But Jared Allen and Karis LeVert and maybe that is where you get into a salary number where you I think it makes sense. And you're also coming up on where those guys you either kind of have to pay them again or you need to trade them. Karis LeVert's got 1 year left on his contract. Jared Allen, I believe, has 2. Them together is near $40 million. LeVert has no value aside from salary, but it's an expiring. Maybe that you could work something out there. Allen's the one with value, and I think that's the pivot. Even though we've seen stuff this summer where Mark Stein's Donovan Mitchell really likes playing with Jared Allen, and Donovan Mitchell posted a photo. Yeah,
that's the question, right? It's
and Mitchell posted a photo well before he signed the extension on his Instagram story of him hugging Jared Allen, and it's
which at that point he probably had already decided he was going to, right? I mean, I think that was kind of the understanding of what that post meant.
It was the fine details and the options and blah blah blah.
Yeah, so thanks, Donovan. We really appreciate you making this kind of fairly unprecedented commitment for a team that made the dare of trading for a player that didn't necessarily want to be on the team that acquired them.
And remember, they gave up all the picks, and Larry Markkinen was in that deal, which in retrospect feels like they gave up one too many picks, or Markkinen didn't need to be in the deal.
Well, yeah, the Suns did the same for KD. So it happens. But okay, and by the way, we're gonna trade the guy you're closest with on the team, who your 2-man game with has been probably the single best thing about our group on the offensive end since you got here.
Yep.
Sorry. Thanks for your commitment. We're going to go ahead and not commit right back to you. I don't know. On the Mobley and Allen topic, though, if you look over the past 2 years in the regular season, they've had a 118.1 offensive rating when both guys are on the court. The issue is that was very heavily skewed toward 2 years ago than this past year, partially because Mobley was in and out of the lineup and kind of had maybe outside of the playoffs close to a lost year, But I guess Atkinson, I mean, I know you were just saying like if you had to pick one guy that could benefit most, it would be Garland, but isn't Atkinson also just being a smarter offensive mind in theory supposed to be a guy who can help that pairing as well? And just was in a situation for the past few years in Golden State that plays a couple bigs, a couple non-shooters a lot of the time. Like that's kind of the theory.
He talked about it at his presser too. He got asked about it, and I learned about this. Obviously, he said it's harder in the modern league, but like we did in Golden State, like there are ways to do it. I mean, if Evan Mobley starts shooting threes tomorrow, you can do it. It's just the question of like that hasn't happened yet, and now we're like.
So I think with that, it's like I honestly don't think of Darius Garland as being constrained by the current situation. I think of that to me in terms of like the maximum value and impact he can have on a team, because I think he's a good shooter. I think we've seen two guards survive together in the past. Now Mitchell's not maybe the most willing or versatile offensive player in terms of the ways that he can be deployed historically in his career. The ship's probably sailed on him becoming that type of guy, so it's not perfect, but I think that can work. I think to me, you are actively kind of limiting Mobley's development by having him in this situation, and that is a big problem.
Yeah, I agree. They've done him a disservice, I think, with where this has ended up. I really
because like he doesn't need to shoot threes, No. That's not a need for him.
It wouldn't be a conversation if Jared Allen wasn't on the team.
Exactly.
And are also pretty good in his own right.
And they don't want to play them together. They never want to play the guys together. I pulled this stat. They played almost as many minutes with Mobley on the court and Allen off than they did together this year. Yeah. So when Mobley was healthy, and a lot of the Jarrett Allen only on was when he was the only big healthy. So when Mobley was healthy, they basically played an even amount of minutes apart as they did together. That just tells you they don't want to have this situation. So, I would agree with you. I thought going in that...
Yeah. And if JB Bickerstaff is doing that, I think a more modern NBA coach like Kenny Atkinson might also be like, do I really want to do this? Even the Warriors, as a point of comparison, it was little dabbles. It wasn't like the bulk of their strategy. It was like, we have to do this for certain stretches and certain matchups. It is not going to define us.
Yeah, they have the Draymond at center card to play. And they had they didn't have another $20 million player that had to go to the bench when Draymond played center. It was Kevon Looney making $7-8 million, who was a specialist as a rebounder and a screen setter and post defender and whatever else. So yeah, I mean, going into the offseason, I thought Jared Allen was clearly the guy. I thought, move on from the coach, move on from Allen, see where that lands you. But then Donovan Mitchell makes this whole commitment to Allen, and then he chooses to stay. And I think the personal side of it really has to factor in. So, without that, it's like you re-sign Okoro up to the luxury tax line, I guess, and you hope Jalen Tyson can contribute in year one. Maybe Merrill and Porter, who kind of broke out last year, keep giving you good stuff. But that's just the same team. And even if we all felt good about them and they've been able to win regular season games, like nobody's picking that team to win a title, and the East just got better.
Merrill, I think I can't talk about Tim Merrill. I'm not going to do it. I really thought about it for a second. I can't do it. You're also have to pay.
My point is just that's what you're looking at. If it's not going to be moves, it's players of Sam Merrill's caliber getting exponentially better, which AKA it's not going to happen.
He's 28. Sneakily so. Yeah. Just going to note that Evan Mobley is again also about to get a rookie max extension. You're paying him. Like there's a certain point where it's like, okay, we got to get the most value out of a guy who's making like a shit ton of money. Like practically. Yep. Like that is just a reality. I do not buy that they're not trading one of Garland or Allen this summer. Okay. I really don't. Right. I just don't. I just would be surprised.
Yeah.
I just
don't think how can you look at yourself in the mirror and just say, "Yeah, let's do it again." Year 3, baby.
It would be a very, considering the win of signing Mitchell, just running it back would be a huge fucking bummer.
Yeah, agree.
You owe it to Mitchell to do more, frankly.
Exactly. That's what he just committed to you. You got to commit back. Two-way street.
Jared Allen team's Pelicans still.
Yeah, I don't really like Ingram in Cleveland, so I don't love that whole situation. Obviously, McCollum doesn't fit there.
Is there a good Ingram team?
Yeah, not how he plays right now.
Yeah,
I don't think. Not a winning team that Ingram could land on that would allow him to play the way he plays now. I mean, I just don't think winning and playing that way are congruent to each other, unfortunately. So that's on him.
Cavs still have a lot of work to do. Haven't made any moves yet. They don't really have the money. They have the mid-level. We'll see. I mean, I think Melton's a little small. Melton might have been string them. Curious to see what happens with the Okoro thing. I would keep him. I'm very bullish on him as a role guy. I just like his toughness.
Yeah.
Unless he gets vastly overpaid by the Pistons or the Hornets, I'm bringing him back. I'm matching whatever. I would. There's elements of this you can I think bring back, but I think it's you hired Kenny Atkinson for a reason. I would evolve. It's time. All right, let's go to Brendan. Some matchmaking. We can get through this one I think relatively in short order. We've got 5 guys. And we're going to tell you what team we think they should go to. Let's start with DeMar DeRozan. I think the biggest name free agent left on the board. There's not a fit I love for him, Brendan, if I'm being honest. I might have liked the Spurs reunion if Chris Paul hadn't gone there. Just let him go be the point guard kind of thing like he was for a stretch there. And, he seemed to like it there and get along with Pop and whatnot. So I guess I'm just going to say the Lakers. The Heat apparently have interest, but I'm just going to say the Lakers. He can go back to LA. The Lakers get a name guy. They get a ball handler who can spray it out to connect, and Reeves as the shooters. I think him and Reeves are not a great fit to both have on their roster off of LeBron, but that just feels like the prestige zone Lakers thing that might happen here.
Yeah, look, I mean, if LeBron was talking about taking a haircut on his deal in order to get somebody, and you could just kind of feel it getting set up for, well, we got to get something, and they were interested in DeMar before he even went to Chicago. If you remember, that was part of the weird summer of 2021 when they blew their whole team up. So yeah, I would just say on that on your idea though, the Spurs, I believe, still have some flexibility. So it might not be a lost cause for them if they cut Devontae Graham. I believe they can start to create some cap space and go over the mid-level for DeRozan. I don't know. Him
and Chris Paul together would just Chris Paul at this age just is hey, Victor Wembanyama, can you block every shot? It's a little tough.
Yeah, I mean, but is that different than last year? I mean,
no, that's true. It's true. I want better.
Is Chris
things.
Paul and a different guy they sign with the mid-level going to help?
No,
I think their roster's kind of set. I don't know.
Yeah,
DeRozan would just be we don't want to be quite as awful, so maybe you making shots can help us set our defense more often, and we liked having you here, type of thing, But also, you said the Spurs. Why am I making the case for it?
Yeah, because you're great. Because you're the man. That's why.
Okay. That I had is I don't think it's actually realistic because I think the Nuggets have shown us that they are cheap and are going to do their best to duck the tax this year.
Shout out.
I imagine that they might, are they ruthless enough to cut DeAndre Jordan at the end of the season or something? I don't know. Or trade Zeke Naji for something that gets them less salary back, et cetera, et cetera. But in a world where I don't care about Sam Kroenke's money because I don't, trading a sign and trade for Zeke Naji, they're not over the second apron, so they're allowed to do a sign and trade. They would get hard capped at the second apron, I believe, if they did that move. Actually, they might get hard capped at the first apron, in which case it might get a little dicey. But whatever, it's possible because Najee makes $9 million. I kind of like that fit as a way to just protect yourself in the non-Jokic minutes. This would be DeRozan coming off the bench.
Yeah,
this would be a very big departure from 20 minutes a game, kind of ring chasing, but not in the end of the bench guy just to get the ring and not play a minute type of thing. He would play. He would be a bench player, but I don't know. I could sort of see it. Just let him cook in those minutes. Maybe some Murray DeRozan actions, and I don't know. Just wanted to spice it up. Throw that out there. I would like it, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I like yours better than mine. You dare to dream. I just went Lakers. All right, let's go to Markelle Fultz.
All right, I have the Lakers here.
Okay, sell me on it.
Well, I mean, they need point of attack defense.
The press release
You know?
would be incredible. We got the former number one overall pick, Markelle Fultz. Some prestige zone spin we could do here.
This would be kind of in a world where he's too similar to Gabe Vincent as things currently stand, but they're also allegedly talking to Portland about Jeremy Grant. So this would be kind of like maybe if D'Lo or Vincent are gone in that trade, which D'Lo almost certainly would be, that Fultz could kind of step in. They do still need point of attack defense. They can use more playmaking, given that Reeves is overmatched doing that as like a full-time guy. Vincent's kind of a combo guard who just happens to be small. LeBron is old. So this would be them striking out on a lot of different things and giving him like a big portion of their mid-level. I think before that, don't be surprised if you see Miles Bridges get rumored or Gary Trent Jr., also clutch clients. But I just think for him, pretty fun fit, kind of doing what Russ did at times and just, running some pick and roll, playing defense at the point of attack and benefiting from being on a better team than he has been and a more space team, frankly, than Orlando. Like I want Fultz out of Orlando for his sake too.
Yeah, you specifically mean Russ on like the Clippers, not the Lakers, because the Lakers comp that was not great.
That's why I think I said theoretically,
Yeah. I went Charlotte for Fultz. Another ball handler there, point of attack defense. He can play off LaMelo some in terms of how they at least play, and maybe it's like a 1 year kind of big money deal and he gets a chance to rehabilitate his value in a place where I think would get some touches. Low stakes.
If they play fast and they spread the floor the way that they have some lineups that they can do that with, I don't hate that.
Yeah. I would like him to get out of Orlando as well. He needs the chance to like be himself in more space. That would be good. Let's go to Tyus Jones. I'm just gonna say go back to the Wizards for as much money as possible.
Me too.
Like that. Like I think he is a guy that could get traded in 6 months to a team that's like, we need a point guard. But like what Tyus Jones is at this point, and I think really what his like NBA destiny really is to be like a really good like game manager for bad teams. And I don't mean that as a slight, but it's like he can just help like Bilal Coulibaly and everyone else getting ready for Cooper Flagg in a year, right? Like that is his job, is to keep the ships running on time. I think just go back, make a ton of money, and maybe you can agitate for a trade in a year. Maybe it's just a 1 year big deal, and you can go take a minimum to chase a title or playoff seeding next year. But let's just go back to the Wizards. I think that's the right move.
The league is kind of getting hip to the fact that if it's a really small point guard who doesn't really score for them, who doesn't really like create offense for themselves much, that guy does not really have a role on, in the conference finals anymore, So it's especially if that player is making money, it gets to be a really tough fit, I think, on a winning team. So, for him, it's probably just, if it's make money, great. If it's biggest role, maybe he willing to take less money somewhere. I don't know. It's a tough spot for him to be in. He's just never really grown into that aggressive scorer that I think people wanted him to be. All right, Buddy Hield next. I have Charlotte for him because we've been wanting them to kind of get a little bit more of a modern approach with Charles Lee, spread the floor for LaMelo and Brandon Miller to kind of go to work, and even their bigs to develop, and they have Salon now, who's not much of a shooter. You want to just kind of go pace and space, I think, in Charlotte. So give Buddy a little bit of your money and see if he can just chuck shots, basically.
I like that a lot. I think that could make sense for him too, to like re-up his value a little bit. I think when he got to Philly and things slowed down, I think he was better in Indiana at higher pace. So I like that. I just said I have in our doc Cavs, back to Philly, or the Lakers. I really just think he should like pick a team that has the mid-level and needs shooting and just like ask them just be like, you have room? And if not, do Charlotte get $15 million? Like, I think he could help a good team, even if there are going to be playoff series where you don't totally love him on the floor. No team is going to turn down more shooting, and if the cost ends up being really low for him, I think there's some good teams that should take a flyer on Buddy Hield, even at 31, even with his limitations, just because the shooting weapon he can be is just super, super valuable.
Yeah, Detroit, any team with a young guard
actually,
that they just want space for.
Answer. The Pistons, that's the one. Watching JB Bickerstaff coach Buddy Hield would also, to me personally, be like incredible league pass watching. But give me shooting around Cade and Duran and those guys. I love that. Let's go Detroit.
All right, Caleb Martin, what do you got?
This is tough because I do fear the Miami, leave Miami thing with wings. I really do.
Also didn't have an awesome season last year.
No, his value was at its highest post the finals in 23. I wish I couldn't find an exact list of teams within the MLE, Brendan. My default answer is just any good team with an MLE opening should be making this call. What about the Spurs though? Create a little room, get rid of Graham, get a competent pro in there. And then it's you have Vassell, him, and Keldon Johnson, and at least you have no all-stars there, but 3 competent wings to play with Chris Paul, to play with Wembanyama. How about the Spurs for Caleb Martin?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think they have more theoretical two-way wings right now than real ones. Vassell, not so much right now. Keldon kind of never was.
Olympics, though.
They're young guys. Sohan is kind of a black hole on offense. Stephon Castle's a rookie. So
Branham and all those other. It's what are these guys anyway? Yeah. We don't really know. It doesn't seem like maybe anything.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think that'd be nice. Mine was if this team strikes out on everything else, Sacramento on the mid-level. Just probably, who knows what they're going to do with the Herter-Barnes package. If I said they strike out, maybe those guys are still around. Frankly, I would consider just starting Martin over Barnes in that case. But either way, they could use just I don't even want to call him a 3-and-D wing. He's a little light on the 3 part of that, unless he's playing Boston in the conference finals. But
then he's Michael Jordan, basically. So
Exactly. So maybe more just a bigger defensive option. But even that would help them because they don't have a lot of those. They did trade for Jalen McDaniels, which kind of went under the radar. I think he could play. Maybe that makes Caleb Martin not worth it.
Good meme though. Who, me? You see all that, right?
See this.
You didn't. He had a clip where someone took a camera to him in the gym and told him he got traded, and he pointed at himself, was like, "Who, me?" That's how he found out he got traded. It was great. I would prefer them just get Caleb Martin than trade for Brandon Ingram.
I really hope Sacramento does not trade for Brandon Ingram or sign DeMar DeRozan, to be honest with you.
Yeah. All right. Let's double check NBA Reddit real quick. Make sure we have not missed anything here, Brendan, as we're recording the show. Only bits of news to come through. Michael Scotto has reported the Knicks have made inquiries on the trade market, showing interest in Walker Kessler and Nick Richards. And there's a sense that the Jazz will listen to offers for Walker Kessler. Okay, sure, whatever.
Which we've already heard.
Yeah. And then Terry Stotts is joining the Warriors as a lead assistant, and Jerry Stackhouse is joining that staff as well.
Is anybody else going to work for the Lakers coaching staff besides JJ Redick?
Kurt Rambis is available.
Linda
Rambis is available.
He's involved whether he's on the media guide or the game notes every night or not. So Rambis is part of it. Maybe they're looking into cloning, maybe like a 3D printer, and just have statues of Redick
NBA lead
sitting next to him.
NBA lead assistants Tommy Alter, Steve Jones, and Nekias Duncan.
Maybe that's where this is headed. But I saw somebody say it's a major kind of red flag that Redick still doesn't have assistants. And
yeah, for a minute we thought they're gonna hire the Avengers of assistants, and then they've hired nobody. So good job, Lakers. You're doing great. Maybe you should have just hired someone with your experience. All right, we're going to end there. I'm Chris Manning. That's Brendon Kleen. I will be back Friday. Wes Goldberg talking more NBA free agency. Maybe we'll get a trade between now and then. All of that and more coming to you on the Just Basketball Show. Check out BetMGM, promo code Just Basketball for that first bet offer. And much, much more coming. Instagram, TikTok, X, all those great social media platforms. Until next time, enjoy the hoops. I'm Chris. That's Brendon. Be well, everyone.